Welcome back to Simply Sports Science, the home of clear, simple and powerful explanations for everything you need to be successful in IB Sports Science. Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's lesson we're going to explore a really vital piece of their sports science puzzle, water and electrolyte balance. We're going to look at why it's essential for the body's effective functioning and how it can be influenced by our environment. This topic is specified in the IB Sports Science syllabus, and understanding this concept thoroughly will prepare you not only for any exam questions but for real life application in sport and exercise contexts. So without waiting any further, let's dive straight in. Let's start by asking the question, what do we mean by water and electrolyte balance? In order to answer this, we really need to define our terms first. So water balance refers to the regulation of water input via drinking, food and metabolic water, and water output via sweat, urine, respiration and feces, in such a way that the internal environment remains stable. If water input equals output, the body is in homeostasis in relation to our hydration. Electrolyte balance is about the correct concentration and distribution of charged ions like sodium, potassium, chloride, magnesium, and calcium in the body's fluid compartments. These ions are essential for nerve conduction, muscular contraction, fluid movement, pH regulation, and many more functions. When water and electrolyte balance is maintained, the body can function well, cells can perform chemical reactions, neurons fire, muscles can contract effectively, and blood volume remains adequate for circulation. So why is this balance necessary for effective functioning of the body? Well, let's explore the specific ways in which water and electrolytes are needed. For transport, water is the main solvent in which nutrients, hormones, gases such as oxygen and carbon dioxide, and waste products travel. Without adequate water, these processes become inefficient. Thermoregulation means sweating and evaporation to help regulate body temperature. But sweat contains water and electrolytes, and if you lose too much without replacing it, temperature control becomes compromised. Then there's cellular metabolism. Metabolic reactions occur in aqueous environments. Electrolytes help maintain correct ionic gradients across cell membranes for enzyme activity, transport, and signaling. Then there's muscle and nerve function. Sodium and potassium gradients are critical for action potentials and muscular contraction, and calcium is essential in muscle contraction regulation. Fluid compartments and blood volume are next. The body is divided into intracellular fluid, ICF, and extracellular fluid, ECF. Electrolytes help regulate how much water is inside versus how much is outside of cells, which affects osmotic balance, cell volume, and blood pressure. And finally, for prevention of dehydration and electrolyte imbalance, because when these are disruptive, performance fails. Risk of cramp increases, fatigue sets in, heat illness can occur, and we become impaired in terms of our recovery process. So essentially, water and electrolytes is the foundation of optimal functioning in all sport and exercise. And it's directly affected by our environment. And this is where it becomes very relevant for us as sports scientists. The environment has a major influence on how the body must manage water and electrolyte balance. In hot and humid conditions, heat increases sweat rate, which means more water is lost per minute. Humidity reduces evaporation efficiency, so cooling becomes harder and the body retains more heat. And because our sweat rate increases, electrolyte loss increases as well. If it's not replaced, you may get low blood sodium or heat-related problems. Then if we look at cold or high altitude conditions, the cold may reduce thirst and sweat perception, leading to inadequate fluid intake even while loss may still occur via respiration or cold-induced diuresis. At altitude, increased breathing rate leads to greater water loss via respiration. And also, dehydration risk increases, altering our electrolyte balances. And during intense exercise, the higher intensity of the exercise, the greater metabolic heat production occurs. We get increased sweating, we use more water, and electrolyte loss becomes greater. And the longer the duration, the longer the sustained losses, and failure to replace leads to gradual imbalance. Therefore, when preparing for your exams, you can expect questions that ask you to explain how environment, such as heat, humidity, or altitude, can influence water and electrolyte balance in athletes, and what the consequences are when balance is not maintained. So now let's look at the mechanisms behind regulation and monitoring of these levels. The syllabus expects us to know how the body controls water and electrolyte balance and how athletes and coaches monitor it. There are some key points here. The first is hormonal regulation. The hormone antidiuretic hormone, ADH, from the pituitary gland increases water reabsorption in the kidneys when plasma osmolality rises. And aldosterone from the adrenal cortex promotes sodium reabsorption in the kidneys, which in turn retains water via osmosis. Then there's the thirst mechanism. Osmoreceptors detect increased plasma osmolarity. This stimulates thirst, which in turn increases our voluntary water intake. Kidney function, including filtration, reabsorption, and excretion, adjust volume and concentration of urine according to hydration status. And our sweat composition changes. With acclimatization to heat, sweat sodium concentration often falls, meaning the body becomes more efficient at conserving sodium despite high sweat volumes. And we can monitor this in our athletes. We can look at pre- and post-exercise body mass changes. For every kilogram we lose in weight, we can assume to have lost 1 litre of fluid. Our urine colour can be checked as quick hydration monitoring. We can estimate the levels of sweat via weighing pre- and post-exercise. And we can monitor our plasma or serum electrolyte levels if this is available to us. And there are significant consequences of an imbalance in our fluid levels. When water and electrolyte balance is not maintained, we can get impaired performance. We can get reduced cardiovascular function, reduced heat dissipation, and increased fatigue. When we lose sodium without replacing it, we can get seizures or confusion, muscle cramps, dehydration, heat stress, and an increased risk of heat exhaustion or heat stroke. If our electrolyte gradients are altered, we can get impaired nerve and muscle function. We can get increased effort of contraction and decreased power output. We can also get overhydrated without replacing electrolytes. In sport and exercise contexts, this means coaches should design hydration strategies before, during, and after training and competition, including electrolyte replacement, fluid schedules, weighing athletes before and after exercise, and educating them on the cues of thirst and urine colour. An athlete should practice in conditions similar to those they're going to compete in, for example, heat acclimatization and fluid retention practice, to optimise sweat response and electrolyte conservation. So let's summarise all of this. We need to know the key terms here: water balance, electrolytes, osmolarity, intracellular fluid, extracellular fluid, dehydration, hypohydration, and acclimatization. We need to be able to explain the function of water and electrolytes within the body, transport, thermoregulation, nerve muscle activity, and blood volume. We need to be ready to describe environmental influences such as heat, humidity, cold, and altitude on fluid and electrolyte balances. And we need to understand the regulatory mechanisms: thirst, ADH, kidneys, and sweat adaptation. And we need to be prepared to apply this knowledge. For example, in a question scenario about a marathon in hot conditions, explain how athletes' electrolyte loss can affect performance and what strategies we would use to mitigate it. So to wrap up, Maintaining water and electrolyte balance is absolutely critical for the body's effective functioning, especially in sport and exercise contexts. The environment adds complexity. Heat, humidity, altitude, and exercise intensity all change fluid balances. As future athletes, coaches, or sports scientists, understanding these concepts gives us the power to design smarter training, recovery, and competition strategies. Thanks for watching Simply Sports Science. If you found this helpful, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of our IB Sports Science content. We've got revision guides, exam tips and clear explanations to help you be successful. And don't forget to visit us at www.simplysportscience.co.uk. Join us again next time where we'll keep making sports science simple.